thank you for showing up, even though this is a change of time for all of us. I was very vigilant, but it's just nice to see new and familiar and all different energies that are in a non-physical form. As I begin the conversation with you, just a gentle reminder, these words are not only for you, they are just as much as for me. And as I present and discover the thoughts, we'll all have a sense of exploration behind it. In the preparation of my morning, as I'm sitting in silence trying to narrow down to what's going on and where the spirit is, I just started browsing YouTube, and I'm like, I need to distract my brain. I need to take my conscious effort and put it sideways. And I found this documentary type of film. It's called Path of Soul. And it is filmed in Nepal, Tibet, and I still haven't finished watching it all the way, so I don't know where the end part is. But there is a certain part of that documentary that just took me back home. Took me back home to India, where I was born and raised in. It's just a sense of wonderment, because every now and then I would see these just going to school or just going to shopping. I would see these families, they would just are doing their process. They are walking few steps, and then they would lay down flat on the floor, bow, and give grace to God, and repeat. So being on my bicycle, I would leave them one place, and then if I were to stop on a stoplight somewhere, they will catch up with me. But they were still doing the same thing. They were just doing their salutation. That's a part of their offering to the higher source, to what they believe. So looking at that in the documentary, it took me to a point and place of something that was familiar, something that was known. So when I saw the documentary, they are going to meet their spiritual counsel, and in the process, all day long, they are what in the documentary they are doing is they are doing their process. They are going walking, saluting, laying flat on the floor, just completing that chant, and then move on all day long, and then they rest at night, and the next day is a whole new process for them. Through the sense of familiarity, what evoked was a little aspect of a memory. A few weeks ago, as I sat in a private session with Yahweh, the storyteller, it's a trance conversation, and my first question was, can you tell me what I'm afraid of? And this was interesting, because I'm watching something totally different that has nothing to do with the thought process that is being evoked. And often you would also encourage, you are going about your business through the norm of the life, and here's the thought process that really takes you on diversion and makes you seek and scope out what's on the inside. So as I sat a little bit more with that thought of what makes me afraid, there was no response. And the response was, you will have to figure it out on your own. Only it was that easy. It's like there's a wash bucket list, X, Y, Z, check off, this is what I'm afraid of. Separate that and then just go on by business. But so not was the case. But as I sat a little bit more deeply in that thought, I became a child. I became, when I was 7, 8, 9, 10 years old, somewhere there. And I could recall myself, I used to live on the second floor, and we had a flight of 27 steps that would lead to the house. And as a child, every year, I was adding 2 more stairs. Now, wait till I tell you what I was adding these 2 more stairs. I could go up and down my home freely, no problem there. But I always had this passion, how high I can jump from. So I started from 3 steps, 5 steps, 6 steps, 7 steps. The last memory, as I stretched myself, I remembered I could jump out 21 steps. But that was an age, a point in life where fear was not as registered pronouncedly as age 44 is. I probably won't jump out 10 steps at this point. But nonetheless, the thought process was leading me to those places, those situations, those scenarios where once we were fearless, but through experience of life, through maturity, a hearsay story, limitation of the physical body, our fears get in our way. So that was just a beautiful thought. It's like, I wish I can stand on the 21st step and look beyond and say, oh, I'm not sure. Gravity is so much in my favor now than it was at that time. I will be completely in the flow of life. Trust me, in the flow of life. But that being said, the beauty of the thought was, here I'm watching something more spiritual, just trying to align myself. And here's the thought that is like looking me in my face. And as I chased down this thought, I said, what can fear or what being afraid can really, really help us in this time period? What are we afraid of? It doesn't matter what we are afraid of. But what we can do from that fear, that's a big question. In this big scheme of life, this big spaghetti bowl of life, we have to figure out where the one end is and where the other end is. We're just trying to make the sense of all there is. But as we are evolving in our journeys of life, we are all in different form, shape, size, understanding. Our brain chemistries are different. Some people, how many of us here has done skydiving? 2. I raised my hand because I've done it in my dreams. You've done it too?
Yeah,
There we are, 3. But as I was reading, this psychology.com had an article, and it was equating fear is that momentary. Once you step out, you're really beyond fear. It's on my bucket list. I'm going to do it one of these days. But as I was reading the article, how I can use fear to segue my life, how I can exchange this fear-based emotion to something more powerful and strong. And the article just simply said, once you commit to something, that's about the end of it. And then Neil Donald Walsh's Conversation with God says, you were born perfect, and I have no idea why everybody is trying to be perfect, because you were born perfect just the way you are. You had everything that you need in that divine order. And then all of a sudden, consciousness, society, looking at others, comparison, and so on and so forth, skew our perspective. But that is an interesting thought. But as I looked upon this sense of why I'm afraid, that was a very powerful question as I sat in conversation within my own sense of, what am I afraid of? And as I look back into that conversation, I can truly say I'm afraid of being wrong. I'm afraid of failures. And I can stand in my own 2 shoes and my skin and be very cognizant about it when I say it out loud. But that is a point in place of recognition within my life. That's me. How you respond and resonate with your own sense of fear or whatever makes you afraid is your own truth. Some people are just afraid of a little ant, a cockroach, something bigger, a snake, something that is there, a fear of unknown, But afraid, or being afraid, or fear can lead us to so many greater things. In this room of many people that are physically here, how many of us have made those drastic changes in life where we had to push on that membrane of trust between us and God? How many of us have lifted ourselves from a poor financial situation to where we are today, where we can say, it is not so bad after all? How many of us have gone through the doors of relationships between personal relationships, professional relationships, spiritual relationships, and we had to push through that membrane of trust? Wherever we are pushing on this door, there might be fear beyond it, or maybe that door is the fear that you have to push through to get to the next phase of life. But where do we sit with all this within our life? That next step can only tell you only if you take action. So I went on making an inventory list how I can segue from fear to not being afraid. Not from that particular thing, but just generically not being afraid. One must have a purpose in front of them to where they are heading for. Without a purpose, that's about it. Vacuum. Even a small leaf on a tree has a purpose. It has an exchange of oxygen and carbon. It's providing fruit to the tree to grow more. Just a very small fragment, but it has a purposeful contribution. So as we said in the aspect of fear, anybody that is dwelling in that buffering zone of where do I go next, look at your purpose. What is our purpose in this time period? Ask yourself that question. Why am I here? What is the next best thing for me? Maybe this is not it. What is the next best thing? Then you create an intention behind that purpose, and that will allow you focus. No matter where life takes you from that point, left or right, you will always know that's your purpose. It will put you in the track to where you need to be. Purpose and intention, and attention on that purpose, sort of put things in perspective. Now, segueing into our spiritualist philosophy of spiritualist journey, all the pioneers back in the super strong Christian era, when they were developing these philosophies, when they were working on these philosophies, I wonder if they were afraid, if they speak out loud, the next door neighbor hears about what's going on, how they're going to respond and react. That's a small fragment of the expression of fear. What would others think about what I believe, what I stand for, what my purpose and intention is? But going into the philosophy part of that, to understand, if you read those old texts, those classical texts within our religion, they are all have thrived much more than what our religion itself is thriving today. At some point there were millions of spiritualist followers, and then everything just churns and everything evolves and everything goes on. But those people that were talking out loud were not afraid of the consequences. They were pushing on that door to go to the next best place, and they've done that. I always equate, I live in Casadega, it's a beautiful spiritualist community of over 125 some years, and George Colby, who was the settler of that community, I would have no idea how he muddled his way through the palm forest and the spiders and the snakes and the muck and everything. He made his journey there on foot. He had help, but he pushed. Was he afraid? I'm sure he was afraid at some point. You know, I mean, I don't know his whole life story. It's not documented. But I would imagine if we have to navigate to open ourselves to the unknown, I want you to recognize this word unknown, because as spiritualists, this is what we encourage ourselves to work with on a day-to-day basis. When George Colby or any of the pioneers back in the times had to deal with the unknowns, they had no idea where it's going to lead. They only had trust. They only had their intention and their attention on the purpose that's in front of them. We believe in something, something is appropriate, something is right, and we're going to move towards it. That's about it. I don't think they wanted to create the 6 billion populace to be all spiritualists. They just wanted to speak their truth. They just wanted to stand firm and stand tall in their own two shoes. And I'm so privileged that I know of them through stories, through teachings, through learnings, through lessons, through history. Because it gives me courage to know if I were to walk outside there and somebody asked me, what is your religion? I can say, I'm a spiritualist. I would not blink my eye. I would not hide myself behind a leaf to tell them something differently. It happens to me work all the time. Get made fun of, but everything at the end of the day, I'm able to stand tall and say, hey, I'm a spiritualist. I believe in the continuity of life. And if you'd like to have a conversation, let's just go outside and clear things up in a spiritualist way. In a spiritualist way. In a spiritualist way. Because we have the ability to trust that unknown, because we believe in the higher consciousness, just like everybody else does it on their own accord. But we believe in the sense of the journey of going into the unknown. So why do I say the unknown is a big word for us? Because every time a medium, a student, a trainer, or an individual who believes in the continuity of life, we all sit with that unknown, because we work with them just as much They work with us, we work with them, and there's always an unknown. You sit in front of somebody, there's a demand of life created by us humans, and the demand of life is we want contact, we want evidence, we want communication. And that unknown becomes that fear factor. So as my training went back 2003, maybe beyond that, but 2003, consciously, the first time I had to give messages, I was a wet, soaking, wet rag. You could just wring sweat out of me. I was just perspiring, and I was sitting in a public podium, and I could barely say 3 sentences. That was all. A lot of it was vibrating within the sense of fear of being wrong, being incorrect, not being accurate, and that's what my fears are. When I sit in the commitment of spirit, I have learned to trust. My purpose is to do the best I can. My intention is to bring evidence with clarity. My intention is to bring that empathy, that healing that the sitter or that individual is needing, like all of us here. We are needing that one thing more that will make our life so much different. But in the journey of our spiritualist philosophy, the principle number 7 just speaks, we create our own sense of happiness and unhappiness by the choices that we make. And where we sit today, if we take a clean lens to investigate where our life is, we will be able to tell on ourselves. We will be able to stand in our own light. This morning when I came in, I was afraid to talk about afraid. So I had to turn and look at the sun. I said, let me close my eyes, let me take some power in, let me soak this in, I'm going to be energized, I'm going to be so charged up, everything's going to be... I turned over there, and when I closed my eyes, instead of finding that blank feeling, the sense of unclarity within myself, when I closed my eyes, I looked at the sun. Everything was illuminated within me. The stronger I clenched my eyes together, yet it was still bright and illuminated. So anytime we walk through these doors of unknowns in our life, where we have no idea where life is from here to the next step, just remember, the sun is there. If we cannot see it, it's on the other side. It will be back soon, soon enough, in a few hours. Who has been admiring the full moon in the last 2-3 days? You cannot say it's dark at night. And I can really say because it's just a beautiful thing. But as I was standing there thinking about what Spirit was pushing me to talk about within my own self, resonating with myself, as I looked at the sun with my eyes closed, I could still feel every aspect of me had that hope that everything is still possible. Everything is still circulating, full of life, full of intention, full of purpose, full of everything that I would like to believe in. As a spiritualist, my journey with Spirit has evolved into something different, something that I had no idea 10, 12 years ago. Something beautiful, because it's like constantly walking that path at all times. And every now and then when I'm thrown off, that's for a lesson, for a loop, for some understanding, that is beyond my comprehension in that given time. I have to learn my lessons. I can't stand tall in my truth and go in the same journey, but unless I'm given a way to understand life differently through my inaccuracies, my inefficiencies, I would probably never progress from where I am. Complacency is a bad addiction. Where you are is not the way you're always supposed to be. Always strive for one thing more. You will get there. Thank you.
Thank you.